Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to get right into a super important chapter for your Class 10 economics exams, development. Now, we hear this word development thrown around all the time, right? But what does it really mean for you, for me, for our country? So let's jump in and break it all down together. Okay, before we go any further, just pause for a second. I want to ask you a question. When you hear the word development, what pops into your head? Is it like a brand new flyover in your city? Maybe getting the newest smartphone? Or is it something bigger, like getting into that dream college? Whatever just came to mind, just hold on to that thought. All right, so here's our game plan for today. First up, we'll figure out what development means on a personal level. Then we're going to zoom out and see how we measure it for a whole country. After that, we'll tackle a big one, why money isn't everything. And finally, we'll look at what development means for the future. Let's go. Okay, let's jump into our first section. And this is a really important idea to get right from the start. Development isn't some one-size-fits-all thing. Nope, what looks like progress to me might be totally different for you. Just think about it. For a landless laborer in a village, what's development? It's pretty clear, right? More work, better pay. That's it. But now, picture a girl from a rich city family. For her, development could be something totally different. Maybe just having the same freedom her brother gets. See how different those are? Your situation in life completely changes what you see as progress. And this is where things get tricky. Because what's development for one person can actually be a disaster for someone else. Let's take that classic textbook example. An industrialist wants to build a massive dam. For him, that's progress. More electricity, more industry. Awesome, right? Well, what about the tribal villagers living there? Their homes, their land, everything they've known for generations is going to be flooded. For them, it's the opposite of development. So you see, these goals can clash, and they often do. So all this leads us to a really basic truth. Development is about more than just money and stuff you can buy. Of course, a good income, a nice house, those things matter. But what about the things money can't buy? Respect, freedom, being treated as an equal, security. Real development, the kind that actually matters, has to be a mix of both the material and the non-material. Okay, so we've got a handle on what development means for different people. But what happens when we zoom out? How do we even begin to compare whole countries? How can we say, for example, that one country is more developed than another? Well, for a very long time, the main way to do this was just by looking at money. The big term here is per capita income, which is just a fancy way of saying average income. It's super simple. You take the entire income of a country and just divide it by the number of people living there. And this is the number one thing the World Bank looks at. And check this out. This is how the World Bank actually puts that number to use. Based on the 2019 data you see here, they create these categories. You've got rich countries, poor countries, and so on. And if you look closely, you can see right where India falls, smack in that low middle income category. But is that it? Is income the whole story? We just said development is a mix of things. So is just looking at the average income really the best way to do this? Let's dig into why using averages can be a huge problem. So this is the question we have to ask ourselves. When you see that one single number, the average income, what is it not telling you? What is it hiding? Does it really paint a true picture of what life is like for every single person in that country? Okay, now look at this. This example is so important. We have two imaginary countries, country A and country B. And would you believe it, they have the exact same average income, 10,000 rupees. But just look at how different they are. In country A, everyone's earning around the same amount. The money's distributed pretty fairly. Now look at country B. You've got 4 people who are incredibly poor and 1 person who is super rich. The average number is the same, but it completely hides this massive gap. Now be honest, which country would you rather live in? The answer is obvious, right? And that right there shows you the 2 biggest problems with only looking at average income. 1, it hides disparities, that huge gap between the rich and the poor. And 2, it tells you zero, absolutely nothing, about how the money is actually spread out among the people. So if income by itself isn't a good enough measure, what is? What else should we be looking at? This brings us to a much better, much more human way of looking at development. It's time to talk about health and education. Let's look at a real-life example from right here in India.
Take a look at the data for Haryana and Kerala. If you only look at per capita income, you'd think, okay, Haryana is more developed. But hold on, look at the other columns. Kerala's infant mortality rate is way, way lower, and its literacy rate is much higher. This is perfect proof that money isn't the only thing that matters.
Now, to make sure we're all on the same page, let's quickly define these terms from the table. Infant mortality rate, or IMR, is pretty serious. It's the number of babies who die before their first birthday, out of every 1,000 born, so a lower number is better. Literacy rate is simple, what percentage of people over 7 can read and write. And a net attendance ratio tells us how many kids in the 14-15 age group are actually going to school. So we want a low IMR and a high literacy rate and net attendance ratio. So what's going on here? How is Kerala, with less money on average, doing so much better in these areas? What's their secret? The answer is one phrase: public facilities. The government in Kerala has invested heavily in making sure there are good schools and good healthcare available for everyone. It's a huge lesson. Money in your own pocket can't buy everything. You also need these essential services provided for the whole community. And all of this thinking leads us to a much, much better way to measure development. It's called the Human Development Index, or HDI. The United Nations puts this out, and it's brilliant because it doesn't just look at money. It combines per capita income with two other vital things: education levels and health, which they measure using life expectancy. It gives us a much fuller, more complete picture. And when you start using HDI, you get some really surprising results. Just look at this data from 2018 comparing India and Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka is a much smaller country, but look at the ranks. It's way ahead of India. And you have to ask why. It's because even with a smaller economy, they've done a better job with health and education for their people. It just goes to show you that what a country chooses to focus on really, really matters. Okay, we're at our last section, and honestly, this might be the most important part of our whole discussion. It's great to talk about being developed right now, but what about tomorrow? What about the future? Is the way we're growing and progressing sustainable? I love this quote. We have not inherited the world from our forefathers, we have borrowed it from our children. Just let that sink in for a second. It perfectly sums up what sustainable development is all about. We can't just use up everything for ourselves. We have a duty to leave behind a world that our children and their children can live in too. And let's be real, we're facing some massive challenges right now. In many parts of India, we're using up groundwater way faster than the rains can fill it back up. And what about resources like crude oil? At the rate we're going, the world's reserves might only last another 50 years or so. All this pollution, all this degradation, it puts our entire future at risk. We've got to understand that if our progress destroys the environment, it's not progress at all. It's a dead end. So, to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final thought, a question to take with you. Don't think about the whole world. Just think about your own community, your own neighborhood. What is one small, practical thing that you, your friends, your family could do to make your area a little more sustainable? Because big changes always start with small steps. And that's a wrap on our explainer on development. I really hope this made all the concepts a lot clearer. Now, to help you really nail this chapter in your exams, we've got some great stuff for you. We've put together important questions, notes, and even a mind map to help you revise. Just click the link in the description to check it all out. Thanks so much for watching, and all the best with your studies.